Okay, so I'm delighted to welcome Pedro Anderson from Winding Tree to the summit this morning. Welcome, Pedro. How are you?
Hi, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Okay, just let's start off by asking you about what Winding Tree is. Really, not everyone will know what it is, what it does, what the concept is, and what you're trying to do at Winding Tree. So just give us a quick 3-minute burst of what Winding Tree is all about.
So, Winding Tree is a marketplace to connect travel businesses one to another that is completely open. It's completely free, and
Hi.
besides minor fees, and it allows for companies the suppliers to get out there to drive more bookings without intermediation. And for startups and smaller OTAs, it allows them the opportunity to access inventory without having to go through a middleman.
Okay. Now I know behind the scenes it uses blockchain technology, and I know that's just part of what you do. I know you don't want to be known as a blockchain company as such, but just a bit on the technology and why it's different, and why it's trying to be different.
So blockchain is a technology that we use, and it plays a critical part in providing trust. So if you're trying to create a marketplace, you need a few core features. So one, you need to have discoverability, be able to find vendors who are selling the product that you're looking for. You need a way to settle payments between these parties. But ultimately, you need trust. I need to know that the vendor really is going to provide the service that he claims to provide, and that the vendor needs to know that I really am a legitimate buyer, right? And so we use blockchain technology specifically for vetting the businesses on the network so that anyone on the network can know that those who are accessing their inventory are solid businesses. The inventory that they're getting is real. This trust component is usually provided by a third party who acts as middleman, but then they also own a lot of the relationships in the network, right? So we used blockchain to provide a secure way for these businesses to vet each other and trust each other without a middleman. We don't own it, they own their relationships. And the reason why I don't mention it up front is kind of like, we all use the internet, and you don't need to mention that you're using AWS for hosting or something like that to explain what your product or service does, right? It is a very critical technology, but I think a lot of times, especially with the craze around blockchain, folks get distracted with it and look at it more as like a magic wand, right?
Yeah. So last time we met in person was back in February, I think, in London. You were here in London for Travel Technology Europe.
Yes.
And that was just prior to ITB Berlin, which unfortunately didn't happen. One of the first events to fall victim to COVID. You were due to do some big announcements there. Just give us an update on where Winding Tree is in terms of its development, kind of things you're now saying you're doing and in market doing.
Yeah, so to backtrack a little bit, when we started out, we started out with a mission of creating an open, democratizing the access to inventory and travel, making it an open marketplace that anyone could access, which naturally led us to public blockchain technology that is tamper-proof. It doesn't allow for anyone to manipulate it. So participants own their relationships in the marketplace. And we started by building it all on public blockchain, which was a lot of work, very slow, very expensive. And we slowly evolved and iterated till we found a model that works really well, provides all the trust. It's completely decentralized, so there's no central point of failure, but still allows for any business to just plug and play, right? And this took a while to come up with. It's a lot harder. It's easier said than done. And in February, we were poised to launch the platform in March, I think we were aiming. And when COVID hit, we thought maybe this isn't the best time, which was also a good thing because we got to test and improve on the technology and create more accessibility tools, because ultimately this is a back-end protocol, very deep technology, and we wanted to create more user-friendly tools to make it more accessible. So we spent the last few months improving on it and creating those front-end solutions to make it a lot more visual and easy for anyone to be able to come in, set up their business, sign up, and start putting their inventory available to other businesses or start accessing that inventory and driving bookings, even without having to have a tech background, which was really exciting. And yeah, that was what we spent the last little bit of time doing during this COVID period.
Okay. So are things now sort of up and running? up to speed with where you would want to be, or has that just put you back for a time, but helped you to sort of get the system really ready for market?
No, we definitely made a lot of progress, and it is live. And it was we launched the platform on July 1st. We've had 14 accounts set up. This is pretty exciting because it's a new way of doing things, and a few companies have signed up since then. And it is live and ready, but there are a few things that maybe we can simplify more as far as just the UX experience. So that's our main focus right now, is trying to make it foolproof, and some things we take for granted that, okay, that makes sense to prove your verifiable claim in this way or something like that. But for somebody else, it might just seem like, wow, that sounds like rocket science, right? So we're trying to clean up the UX. But as far as the product, the technology, it's all live and it's ready and it's at full capacity right now, which I think is a big milestone for the industry.
Yeah. And who do you expect the platform to appeal to most? You mentioned sort of startups, and that's what this morning's all about. But do you expect it to be used more widely than that, even though it does, enable startups to get into business as well?
I see, so first of all, the supplier side, it's very exciting for major brands as well as smaller hotels and airlines. We've had interest from startups, from smaller OTAs, and then even from corporate travel solutions, and even corporations themselves, looking for ways to leverage this to be able to connect directly with suppliers. So I was surprised to see that it was pretty even across the board. There wasn't an overwhelming amount of startups relative to big companies, based on just the last couple of weeks of around 1,000 signups, I think, on attempts, right, where people are starting to set up.
Okay. And what's COVID done? You're speaking as a startup yourself now, and COVID's come and had a massive impact on the travel industry in particular, but on the global, economy more widely. Speaking as a startup yourself, what do you look at now in terms of prospects for yourselves in a COVID world as a startup in the sector?
Well, I think that there were different ways a company reacted. At the beginning, some innovation teams were dropped. I remember our newsletter had about 70,000 subscribers. And when we sent it out in April, there were about 15,000 that were laid off, right? So it was very hard to see, and we had to make adjustments internally and everything. So it is a tough time, but at the same time, the lower volume and travel transactions, I think, is an opportunity, because we can, for the first time in our lives, really have the opportunity to experiment with new technologies that can radically change potential for the future once travel starts picking back up. And I think that there are some pioneers out there, as we've seen from all the folks that are signing up, that are willing to use this time to improve and try new technologies, so that when travel picks up again, they come out well ahead of the competition. I think the old ways of doing things and the high costs and the old technology that is very cumbersome will be very limiting for companies, especially after this, right?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty positive that this is going to be a good thing for the industry in the end, in the long run.
Are you optimistic for the sector? I mean, I've spoken to a number of CEOs in the last 3 months or so. A lot have said similar things. They see the industry going through a massive reset. Massive established brands like Last Minute saying, look, feels like we're back into startup mode again ourselves, which I suppose that reflects how much contraction there's been in the sector, but actually says that, look, potentially we've got an era of real innovation that's going to happen, because firms are having to do stuff now, whereas they don't really have a choice. Before, they kind of could ignore some of the problems and ignore some of the stuff they thought they knew they had to do. So do you think that maybe we're going to enter a phase where people will start to think the unthinkable and do the things they really, really wanted to do, because really there's little choice?
Yeah, and I think the thing about when you have times of crisis, it allows for that kind of innovation that's normally hard to do in bigger organizations. Like if you look at the .com bubble, when there was that collapse, and then also in 2008, the real estate crisis and everything, a lot of new solutions came out around those times. And it's some of the more fundamental, big products that we all use every day, right? So a lot of good comes out of those times as well. And I think, like you said, a big part of that is being able to take more risk, because doing things the way you always did won't work in the new environment. If there's a new, faster, cheaper, safer way to do what you've been doing for a long time, I think it's a no-brainer, and it's much easier to try these new things, right?
Yeah, I guess one of the forces for change has always been when the big boys, the big corporates, they realise that they've got to change in order to adapt to the future. And nobody's been immune from the impact of this. So the biggest brands in travel have all been talking about having to change and really react to what's happened. So do you expect them to lead the way, or I mean, you're about very much sort of disintermediation. So is everybody going to have to look at this, because fundamentally anyone in the middle is potentially going to have to react, because if they don't, their position is being undermined by new incumbents?
I think that the hardest thing is to get over the fact that it can be as easy as it really is. This is one of the responses we've gotten a lot. Like, it can't really be that easy, right? Like, it's cheaper. I don't have to pay an intermediary fee. I can innovate and iterate fast. I can choose who I work with. I can, connect with any other business, start selling, and I can blacklist them instantly. All of it sounds too good to be true, right? And so I don't think it's a matter of being, a big company coming in and leading the way. It's going to take more and more folks saying, yeah, like, I want to try this. I want to see what my company could be like if I were to take the reins and start this new way of doing things, right? So it's a risk that has to be taken, but at the end of the day, it's not about the size of the company. It's the person that makes that decision, right?
And just finally, before we wrap this little session up, as a startup, as an entrepreneur in travel, having experienced what's gone on the last 4 months and looking forward, what's your sort of best tip to other people out there who are looking to use this opportunity to take their idea, their startup concept, and make it work in the coming months?
Are you talking about Winding Tree in particular, or just
in general, from your experience at Winding Tree?
Yeah, I would try to move to direct relationships with customers as much as possible. Whether that means, on Winding Tree, of course, I'm a big fan of connecting directly with third parties instead of going through an intermediary. But I mean, on every level of travel, connecting directly with the traveler and removing the layers of intermediation as much as possible, and seeing what can be trimmed off so that you can have that direct connection as much as possible, both in terms of cost and in terms of data and the value that you can provide beyond what intermediaries can, right? Yeah. So anything that gets you closer to travel, I think, is the end goal of this period of low travel activity.
Great. Well, Pedro, thanks very much for that, and appreciate you joining us all the way from Kiev today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Cheers.